Welcome back to TC Talk Sports. We are that much closer to the NCAA tournament. I'm doing whatever I can to prepare you for what surely will be madness. In my last video, I broke down the 4 favorites for this year's tournaments, or at least the 4 teams that I think deserve to be the 1 seed in Duke, Auburn, Houston, and Florida. Definitely go and watch that one. I tell you everything you need to know about those 4 teams and what you need to know before you start filling out your bracket. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the teams that usually are poised to make deep runs in the tournament. They're just historically known to be really good teams, but might not be as good as they should be this year. Today, I'm talking about the Blue Bloods. Yes, you may have noticed the North Carolina shirt again. In my last video, I had a North Carolina shirt on, but I'm doing this with the most unbiased opinion ever. UNC obviously not having a great year. Could they make a run to the tournament? Even if they make it to the tournament, we're going to find out in this video. When you think of Blue Bloods, you usually think of Duke, Kentucky, Kansas, North Carolina, UCLA. UCLA, throw them out the window. They're not even going to make it to the tournament. Last video, I talked about Duke and just how good they are. Cooper Flagg did get hurt in Duke's first ACC tournament game. I think he'll be ready by the time March Madness actually starts. Will he be fully healthy? We'll just have to wait and see, but I'm not going to talk about them today. In this video, it's all about North Carolina, Kansas, and Kentucky. If you're a fan of college basketball, you love March Madness, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Go back and watch my last video, watch this video. Go to TikTok, TC Talk Sports, follow that. I've switched a gear to college basketball the last week or 2, so if you're a fan, definitely want to follow along. First up for the Blue Bloods, my boys, the North Carolina Tar Heels. They came into the ACC tournament with a 20-12 record. I don't know if that record's really deceiving. I mean, normally they're a really good team. They were ranked preseason. They've now fallen out of the rankings, but they're now in the conference semifinals versus Duke on Friday. Beginning of the year, midway through the year, they started playing bad, and my hopes of an NCAA tournament berth kind of just disappeared. The committee loves looking at records, quality of wins, quality of losses. North Carolina in Quad 1 have been absolutely horrible. They were like 1-10 versus Quad 1 opponents or something like that. But in like half of those games, they kept it close. They lost to Kansas by 3, Michigan State by 3 in overtime, lost to Florida by 6. And if you watch my last video, you know how much high praise I have for the Florida Gators this year. So North Carolina played in a lot of close games. Unfortunately, they just weren't able to close out most of those games, and that's why they sit at that 20-12 record. But they have been playing a lot better recently, starting to play better when it matters the most. They were 7-2 in the last 9 games going into the ACC tournament. Yes, most of those opponents haven't been really good. No Quad 1 matchups beating teams like SMU, Pitt, Notre Dame, but they're starting to heat up when it matters going into the NCAA tournament. Right now, Joe Lunardi has them as the last 4 out, so they're still teetering on the outside of the tournament. A win on Friday versus Duke, I think, would put them in the tournament. Obviously, if they win the ACC championship, they're automatically in. But when the brackets come out, Selection Sunday, I do believe the North Carolina Tar Heels will be in the tournament. With that being said, if they make the tournament, bias aside, I'm not going to say they're going to make a crazy Final Four run or anything like that. I just don't think this team is built to make a deep run in March Madness. If they get there, that's good. Maybe they'll win a round 1 game. Maybe a round 2 game just because they have some experience. They do have talent on their roster. They just haven't been playing all that well this year. Big part of that, RJ Davis. He's coming off a season in which he was the ACC Player of the Year. He's definitely having a down year this year. His shooting is down. His points per game average is down. He has been passing the ball a little bit better, but if North Carolina wants to have any chance of making a deep run in the tournament, he's going to have to play like the ACC Player of the Year. He's the most experienced player on the team, one of the most experienced players in the history of the conference, so they would definitely need him to step up and have really big games. I don't want to get into it too much, but at the beginning, really, of his career, Jalen Washington, the center for North Carolina, I didn't think he was a one-and-done type of player or anything, but I thought he could transform into one of the North Carolina great bigs like Armando Bacot, Kennedy Meeks, Isaiah Hicks, Luke May even, but he just has not done that in his career. It was just super disappointing to me. I had such high hopes for him, and throughout this year, we've seen him. He did have a couple good games, but for the most part, a very underwhelming season. But Ven Allen Lubin has been getting starts as of recently and been playing really well. He has 2 double-doubles in the ACC tournament so far this year. At the end of the regular season, he started having double-doubles, some big games, and I think he solidified himself as that starting big for the Tar Heels, even though he's not that big of a player, but he's basically the best they got at this point. I did mention the talent on this roster, and I think it comes in the form of two freshmen, Ian Jackson and Drake Powell, both projected first-round picks in this year's NBA draft. I would love for them to stay at least one more year. I think Ian Jackson has potential of being a Player of the Year, ACC Player of the Year candidate if he stays another year or two. But both of them having fantastic freshman seasons, have definitely stepped up when they had to, when guys like RJ Davis, Seth Trimble, and Elliot Cadeau haven't been playing well. So I think they do give North Carolina that little boost, whether they're starters or coming off the bench. But if they make the NCAA tournament, those two are also going to have to play sensational for the Tar Heels to make any sort of run. My worries with North Carolina, if they make the tournament, is their lack of size. They'll probably get out-rebounded every game. I mean, they're just not the same down low when they had guys like Kennedy Meeks or Armando Bacot. So, I mean, they're just going to have to box out, play strong on defense, and do not give up offensive rebounds. Also, shooting the three ball could be a concern for me, especially if RJ Davis isn't shooting well. They brought in Cade Tyson, the transfer. He's a good shooter, but just doesn't get too many minutes off the bench for Carolina. Ian Jackson, a good shooter, but sometimes he takes some crazy one-legged step-back threes that are just low percentage shots. So I think rebounding and three-point shooting are the big keys that North Carolina needs to improve upon going into the tournament if they make it. But like I said at the beginning of this rant, biased aside, I think they have been playing better as of recently, but if they make it to the tournament, I don't see them going very far. Coming up, I'll be talking about the Kentucky Wildcats, who are basically a completely different team from a year ago. But right now, I want to talk about the Kansas Jayhawks, and I know I'm going to hate myself for what I'm about to say here, but just hear me out. Kansas Jayhawks, 20-11, going into the conference tournament. They just lost last night to Arizona, but they are firmly in the tournament, just a matter of what seed they get. They might fall around like a 7 seed maybe. I think that would be appropriate for them. Preseason rankings, they were ranked number 1 in the country. At the end of the regular season, they were left without a ranking outside of the top 25, and unfortunately, I don't think that's going to stop me from taking them deep in the NCAA tournament. I just hope I don't regret that. You might be saying, why the hell do you think Kansas can make a deep run in the tournament? Well, here you go. They are a super experienced team. Age-wise, they have to be one of the oldest teams in the country. DeJuan Harris, Hunter Dickinson, I mean, they're both very old, experienced players. They have NCAA tournament experience. Those two need to be locked in and ready to go when March Madness begins. KJ Adams, for whatever reason, Adams is one of my favorite players in the country. It's not like he's this big, flashy type of player, but he can jump out of the gym. His vertical has to be one of the highest in the country. But if a ball is up in the air, whether it's a rebound or a lob for a dunk, he's more than likely going to come down with it, with that rebound, or finish the alley-oop. His legs are like tree trunks. He does Russian deadlifts 3 to 4 times a week. I heard someone say that about him. I think he's an underrated passer. Not a great ball handler, but he can definitely make the right passes, good passes when he needs to. So if you want to call that a big 3 with Harris, Adams, and Dickinson, go ahead. But their experience, they've been in the tournament before, and that's only the beginning. Bill Self, one of the best college coaches of all time. I think he's had struggles with this team, obviously, this year. But I think going into the NCAA tournament, experience matters. They have that with those 3 guys I mentioned and their transfers. Zeke Mayo from South Dakota State, A.J. Storr from Wisconsin, Rylan Griffin, who I thought was a great addition for Kansas. He's only a sophomore, but he transferred in from Alabama. I thought he played really well in limited minutes at times for Bama last season. But really, Zeke Mayo has been the best out of those transfers. I thought A.J. Storr would have a really good year for Kansas, whether he started or came off of the bench. We haven't really seen that this year until that first-round matchup versus UCF in the tournament, where he put up a season high in points, which, I mean, he's capable of doing that. He played really well at Wisconsin, a great career there, just hasn't really transferred over so much to this Kansas Jayhawks team. But when it's all said and done, you get into the tournament, which they're already locked in for that, just a matter of what seed they get. But all that experience and a head coach like Bill Self, I think it definitely helps. I might regret taking them deep, but ever since the season started, I mean, I bet on them at the beginning of the year to win the championship. I don't know if they can win the championship still, but I think they're capable of making a deep run. I'm going to have a video of me filling out my bracket, and I'm just going to be nervous and sweating when I see the matchups, but I just can't resist for whatever reason in taking Kansas deep. Now onto the Kentucky Wildcats, who, just looking from last year to this year's team, they are completely different. They came into the conference tournaments with a 21-10 record. New head coach Mark Pope, I think he has done a really good job with his team. As I mentioned, 21-10 record, a completely new team, a lot of transfers. I think he's done a great job. Kentucky, again, one of the best offensive teams in the country. They average 85.8 points per game, third best in the entire country. And if you watch them, I mean, you just know how capable they are of scoring on offense. And one of the best games of the season, a shootout versus Florida. They won 106-100. That's an NBA type score, but Kentucky's offense is just that good. I talked about transfers with Kansas, and it was transfer portal galore for Kentucky this season, picking up Kobe Brea from Dayton, one of the best three-point shooters in the country. He's averaging 44.4% from beyond the arc. He takes a little over 5 per game, whether it's off the dribble, catch and shoot. He is a better catch and shooter, I think, than off the dribble, but every time he shoots it, you just expect it to go in. Otega Owe from Oklahoma, the matchup versus Oklahoma, scored like 18 straight points in the second half or whatever, literally put the team on his back to get that win, including the game-winning shot. He has been fantastic this year, one of the best players in the SEC. Amari Williams, the transfer from Drexel, I think he's in his 5th year now. I think he's a very underrated big. I tweeted out like a couple weeks ago how crazy age plays a factor into scouting out prospects for the NBA, because if Amari Williams was a freshman, he would definitely be a lottery pick, definitely top 10 pick, just the way he can rebound, he can handle the ball as a big, he'll get a defensive board, dribble down the court, and I think he is a really good passer. I don't think it's an underrated skill because it's talked about enough. He's a good passer at his size, like 6'10", 6'11". He's just a beast down low, and I think he's going to play a good role for this Kentucky team in the NCAA tournament. Lamont Butler, I think, was one of the best pickups for any team in the transfer portal this year. Coming out of San Diego State, Butler is one of the best, by far, on-ball defenders in the country. He was part of that San Diego State championship run team 2 years ago. San Diego State, one of the best defensive teams in the country. He was a big part of that. He's been hurt at times this season. Offensive numbers might be down a little bit, but he's another experienced guy that I think has helped this team tremendously this season and will continue to help them as we go into the NCAA tournament. Out of these 3 blue bloods, reasonably, I think Kentucky has the best chance to make a deep run in the tournament. I mean, they are just a better team overall than UNC and Kansas. Like I said, Kansas, I think I'm just going to have to take them deep at this point. It's been in my head all season that they're going to make a deep run. UNC, I could easily see an easy exit, maybe 1, maybe 2 wins, but I think Kentucky has a chance to go the furthest out of these teams. But it's March, it's madness. We'll just have to wait and see. There you have it. That's what you should know about the 3 blue bloods going into the NCAA tournament. My 3 takeaways, 1 for each team. UNC, I just don't think they're built for a deep tournament run at all. Kansas, unfortunately, I'm probably going to regret it, but I hope I don't. I think have the capabilities of making a deep run in this year's tournament, but they could also lose in the first round. It's just, I just can't wait to see that bracket. In Kentucky, one of the best offenses in the country. They can shoot the 3 ball. Andrew Carr, another good transfer that I didn't mention out of Wake Forest that has helped this team a lot. Amari Williams, Lamont Butler, Otega Owe, all really good players. I think Kentucky out of these 3 have the best chance to make it deep, but I'm not so high on Kentucky this year. If they hit offensive droughts, I don't think their defense is good enough, even with Lamont Butler on the floor, but it's just going to be crazy, and all these opinions could change when the brackets come out and we see these first-round matchups, but I'm telling you, don't be surprised if Kansas makes a deep run in this year's tournament.